Okay, so ionic precipitation. ठीक है, now ionic precipitation is it's used when you have soluble reactants. So the reactants are soluble, and the salt that you're trying to make, that's an insoluble salt.
Okay.
And not just a salt, any insoluble ionic product could be made using this method. So the method is simple.
Okay.
For example, you want to make barium sulfate.
Mm.
Now, barium sulfate is insoluble; it's a solid, right? All sulfates are
Yeah.
soluble except for barium, basically. Now,
Okay.
Acha, how are you going to make this barium sulfate? What you're going to do is you're going to think of two reactants, one that has barium ions and the other one that has sulfate ions in it.
Yeah.
You can think of two reactants, and the two reactants, they must be soluble. Now, barium ions, you can think of barium nitrate, right? The other one should contain sulfate ions. Think of sodium sulfate. Now, it could be, it's not just these two. You could think of many other reactants,
Okay.
like barium chloride. That's also a barium compound that is soluble. And sulfate, you can think of H2SO4, right? It has sulfate
Mm.
in it and it's soluble. So
Yeah.
anything, pretty much anything. Barium, what are the barium compounds? Barium hydroxide is soluble, right? The other one,
Okay.
sulfate, potassium sulfate is soluble, right?
Okay.
Now, so that's the idea. That
Mm.
so the idea is that if you want to make an insoluble salt or a compound, an insoluble ionic product, uh,
Mm.
think of one of the ions coming from one of the compounds, the other ion coming from the other compound, and the condition is that they must be soluble.
Okay.
So I'm going to pick this first reaction first, and let's see what's going to happen. What's going to happen is that let's take a beaker and let's take a beaker and add the two compounds that we thought of, barium
Okay.
nitrate and sodium sulfate. Now, since they're
Mm.
soluble, they're going to dissociate in water. So barium ions would be roaming around in water because they've dissolved in water. All nitrates are soluble.
Okay.
Similarly, sodium sulfate would also be dissolved in
Okay.
water, and the ions would be just roaming around, right?
Okay. Yeah.
And these ions would randomly combine with each other, a positive ion and a negative ion. So, for example, barium ions and sulfate ions, they might combine together, and
Mm.
if they combine together, they would
Mm.
form barium sulfate, and barium sulfate is insoluble; it doesn't dissolve.
Okay. So it becomes solid good at the bottom.
So it's going to settle at the bottom. It's going to be a solid, and the solution would have lesser and lesser barium ions and sulfate ions because they're going to combine to form this
Yeah.
crystal
Okay.
or this precipitate.
Okay.
Okay, it's known as a PPT. I said, what about sodium and nitrate? Even if they combine, uh,
They're not gonna.
they're still soluble. Sodium nitrate is very soluble,
Okay.
so they're going to remain part of the solution.
Okay.
So they'll just be roaming around in the solution. So the
Yeah.
end result is that you get a precipitate of barium. You get this precipitate of barium sulfate, solid. Plus,
Mm.
what's left in the solution is sodium nitrate, which is going to be aqueous.
Okay.
And so, how can you get this barium sulfate precipitate? You simply filter it out.
Okay. What if is it possible to have like two insoluble products?
No, it's usually no, it's not possible. I don't think it's possible.
Okay.
I mean, it's let me think. I don't think. Just one second. Barium chloride and silver. No, no, I don't think it's possible.
Okay.
Uh, as I said, you filter out the precipitate, right? So that's the
Yep.
whole process. So I'm going to write down the description. The description is pretty simple. The only thing that you have to do is you have to think of the two reactants that you're going to use. So you're going to write that mix barium nitrate which is going to be aqueous with sodium sulfate, which is also going to be
Aqueous.
aqueous. And as soon as you mix them, a precipitate would form of barium sulfate.
Yep.
So you filter out precipitate of barium sulfate, which is going to be a solid.
Solid. Yep.
And since it's insoluble, you can wash it. Wash the precipitate, you can clean it.
Okay, so it'll be like completely fused together, like a proper new thing, like metal, or will it be like a powder?
I said, no, not like a metal, but more like a piece of marble. ठीक है?
Okay,
अच्छा,
so it'll be
but
very strong. It'll be hard.
yeah, but let me tell you, it's probably going to be in powdered form.
Okay.
ठीक है? Not fused together because you're not giving it enough time for a proper crystal to form.
Okay.
ठीक है? I mean, there is a possibility that a proper crystal could form, a very large crystal, but it's more like tiny particles, tiny small. I mean, it's like a crushed piece of marble or chalk, like in powdered form.
Okay. Yeah, okay.
So the way you're going to wash it is like you're filtering it, right?
Yeah.
So filter paper it's like funnel shaped, right?
Yeah.
And all the precipitate would kind of, I mean, you're pouring it
Say
from
the
the
top.
top. It will
Yeah.
settle over here. This is where the residue is. So the way you're
Yeah.
going to wash it is you're going to add distilled water
Mm. Yeah.
from the top.
And I just go to.
Yeah, the water would pass through, and but the precipitate would get washed away. I mean, the precipitate would get washed. The precipitate would remain there, but it
Yeah,
would
just
get
see.
clean. So wash the precipitate
Yeah.
and dry precipitate between filter papers. So I'm going to give you another compound. Think, and we're going to try and make another insoluble salt. So let's
Okay.
say I'm trying to make calcium carbonate,
Mm.
which is insoluble. So what should I mix?
Um. So like, hey, so this is calcium. So you could do like, um, what's the symbol for calcium? CaNH4,
It can't be CS plus 2, group 2.
CaNH4 2.
But NH4 is plus 1. You can't have two positive ions in a compound.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. So CaNO3 2.
Exactly. So all nitrates are soluble. So that's an easy one.
Yeah, and then mix that with the NH4. Can you use NH4 or no?
Now you can because carbonate is -2, right?
Yeah.
But is it soluble?
Uh, yes, it is.
Okay, because all anything that has NH4 in it is soluble.
Yeah,
So these two compounds, uh, and both of them are aqueous.
yeah.
Both of them are aqueous. So tell me what other thing would be produced?
NO3 NH4.
NO3 and NH4, or NH4 and a positive ion is written first.
Okay, NH4 NH3 and NO3.
So ammonium nitrate, and that would remain part of the solution because it's soluble, right?
Yep.
I said now, remember also that the salt has to be insoluble. You can't produce a soluble salt this way.
Okay,
Then
it's not balanced, so you need to put like a 2 before the NH4, right? Make it balance.
exactly, so it's going to be two. Yes, that's it. Now it's balanced,
Yep.
and the description is always going to be
Same.
exactly the same. That you mix these two
The
compounds.
two. Yeah.
I'd say it could have been many different compounds. It could have been calcium chloride. That's also aqueous. This could be sodium carbonate or potassium carbonate or any carbonate that's soluble. But it has to be soluble. Why can't it be insoluble?
Because then the method doesn't work because then it won't make it inside the solution.
Yeah, and because
Inside the product.
then the ions won't be moving around in the solution if they're insoluble.
Okay, yeah.
ठीक है? I mean, calcium nitrate means that the nitrate ions and the calcium ions are not together. I mean, they're all
Okay.
roaming around. If it was solid, they would have been together, and there would be no need for any other ion to come in.
Yep, okay.
Acha, so this is simply ionic precipitation.
Okay.
So now do the simple exercise. We've done three. Uh, ठीक है, tell me how would you make? I'm going to write down the salts. Aluminum nitrate. This is what you have to make. ठीक है, that's one. Give me an equation for a reaction and describe the method.
Okay.
So that's number one, aluminum nitrate. Second one is potassium chloride. Third one is copper hydroxide.
Okay.
And aluminum nitrate is not two, it's actually three.